Today, well, at this moment, you are in a place called Coneval, and as Alejandro was saying, this is a kind of new institution. So my goal here is trying to tell you what is Coneval about and why do we have such an institution in Mexico. So I wonder if any of you have a private business yourselves, or your parents, or any colleague, perhaps any one of you from here has a private firm, private. Yeah, you do. What do you do?
My family has a commercialization business.
All right. Anyone else?
My dad has an export.
Export. All right. So I'm sure later on in your life you're going to have a private firm eventually, or I know you know many people that close people that have some. And a very obvious thing about private firms, even if they are small, is that those who put the money there, the shareholders, one or two or whatever, they always have the incentive to get the information from the firm very quickly. So if you have your money and you hire a CEO or a manager, you have all the incentives to ask him or her about the main indicators right away. So almost every 6 months, perhaps, you are going to ask this person to give you just the costs of the firm, what have you, the sellings and all that. And of course, one important indicator you will be asking that person from time to time is the main indicator, which is with a profit, because you are putting your money in order to get a return. Therefore, the return for your investment is your main indicator, and you are asking him, her, very quickly and almost immediately, and therefore you are demanding to have proper information coming from your money. That is very natural and that's very obvious on a private sector, on a private firm. However, when you go to a public policy, when you go to a public program, when you're using the resources of many people to do certain programs, when you talk about governments, that's the same element is not there automatically. So it is not true. In spite of the importance of a very important program, in spite of the amounts that a certain program is using, it is not that immediate, it is not that clear, it is not that direct, that someone is asking the manager, now a public manager, for the results of that specific program, that specific policy. And there are various reasons why this is happening. First of all, many people are owners of that program. Many taxpayers are putting the money there, and therefore, because we are so many owners, we are so many and there's no one around us at the same time. We are not organized as taxpayers to go around and ask managers for several programs. B, another possibility is that, believe it or not, sometimes in public programs, you don't know exactly which is your most important indicator. So it is profits for a private firm, which is quite logical. But what is exactly the main indicator for program A or B or C? So believe it or not, that is the case sometimes. And we have been struggling in Mexico, and perhaps the same happens in other countries, in Latin America, that you have programs which have been there for 20 years. And when you ask the manager, or the managers, or the main people, so what is the program about? Sometimes the answer is, well, what we do here is we deliver milk for poor people. That's fine, but why do you deliver milk? I mean, why don't you deliver sushi or? Well, because we do that. So we do deliver milk for poor people. But why is that? So you have to go and ask many times and go to many rounds in order to, for these people sometimes, to realize very clearly that you are delivering fortified milk with iron in order for poor people to have an intake of iron and reduce anemia, for instance, or reduce certain degrees of undernutrition. So therefore, if you don't realize that, then your main indicators, the ones you are delivering to the public or to the government or whatever, your main indicators may be the percentage of budget spent during the year, which is a typical indicator in most countries when we talk about governments. So the percentage of the budget was spent in the previous year, that is crazy. I mean, you just imagine that your CEO from your firm, of your parents, will tell your parents, I have a very good news for you. I spent the whole money you gave me last year. So why did you do that? Well, because the idea was to spend the whole money. Well, no, the idea was that those resources are there to have the highest indicator in profits in your case. What is the indicator in this milk program? Well, it is not spending the whole budget. Neither is delivering 5,000 liters of milk every month or whatever. The indicator is the percentage of people with that program without anemia or with reduce anemia. So that is the most element. So of course, when you go from a private sector or a private firm to a public one, we understand that measuring those things is not always clear. And then measuring itself, the measurement itself, sometimes is not very clear. Because you may have in a private firm directly, almost directly, an impact evaluation of your action, which is the internal return rate. Which is, well, I have this return in my firm. What would have been the return if I put my money in the bank? So that difference is basically my profits, my economic profit, and that is telling you what would have happened with the money if you did something else. Well, that question, when you apply it to a public policy or a public program, that answer is not that clear, because as you know from perhaps your many lessons and courses and all that, you may need an impact evaluation to understand what would have happened to those people without this specific program. And measuring that is not always that easy. Therefore, we understand that there are various difficulties and obstacles when trying to measure the impact or the main indicators or even monitoring a public program. However, we need to do that. Fortunately, the world as a whole has been advancing a lot in terms of measuring things, in terms of data. And now we can see in the 21st century, in many countries, this way of measuring things. And it's not only about, it's not only an academic element. It's not only academics measuring things in a nice way and then publishing papers. It is about trying to address a fundamental question which citizens are demanding from governments in a strong way, which is, you let us know which are the results of our taxes. And therefore, when you see your various countries, and various countries in Latin America and in other places, you may see countries going forward on these elements, trying to evaluate, monitor, and measure different things. What happened specifically to Mexico? Well, Mexico is a special country, belongs to Latin America. We may have similar problems in Chile and Peru and Guatemala and others, and the Chileans may later tell us what happened in Chile and in your countries. But this is the vision we have in Mexico, a very, very quick vision of what happened. So for a long time, although Mexico had elections, we really were not a democratic country. Really. Why? Because, well, the same party used to win all the elections, and sometimes that party won with some tricks and that, no? Therefore, I don't think we can say that Mexico was or has been a democratic country for a long time, for many decades. And therefore, I believe that if you don't have democracy, then it is very difficult for citizens to demand indicators from countries. The more authoritarian is a government, the less you can hope of doing evaluation and good indicators and measuring in a reliable way. I think that's the case in general. So we can see countries, and perhaps we can have a debate later. But then, so in Mexico it was very clear. I mean, I was joking about elections, but it was a very serious matter. I mean, people didn't believe in the elections because governments used to trick them, used to cheat on that. Mexican government used to cheat on the inflation rate. Mexican government used to cheat on the unemployment rate. And therefore the Mexican citizens were not really trusting governments. And then something happened which was very interesting. In 1997, for the first time in many decades, in Mexico we had the Congress, which was as a majority of a different party as the president, as executive, for the first time in decades. And therefore, what you can see, starting on that point, you'll start seeing much more demand from Congress in terms of transparency, in terms of measuring, in terms of reliable indicators. Therefore, it is very clear, it is not a coincidence that in 1998 and onwards, you will see various acts, various laws, in which Congress is demanding to the executive transparency. So you have the law transparency. You have a new audit unit in Congress, la Auditoría Superior de la Federación. You have a new law in terms of budgets. And then also, among all these changes, you have a new law about social development, which was signed for all political parties in the year 2004 and 2005, between those years. And that specific law, the law of social development, created a new institution to measure poverty and to evaluate social policy. And that institution is called Coneval. So, in the previous years, we didn't have an official poverty indicator in Mexico. We used to have, well, we had GDP and inflation and unemployment. We didn't have poverty. And in the year 2001, the government, a new government with a new party, elaborated the first poverty indicator. However, the opposition parties didn't believe on that poverty because it was, according to them, it was issued by the same government. And we start having also evaluations in the year 2001, and again, the opposition parties did not believe on those evaluations. They believed, and they were right sometimes, that the same program was hiring its own evaluator, and therefore that evaluator was saying very good things about the program, and they were sent these evaluations to Congress, and nothing happened. So that was partly true. And that is why, in 2004, this law created Coneval. Not only that, there are two mandates in Coneval, two important mandates in Coneval. First, to evaluate the social policy as a whole, including the programs. And the second one, as I said, is to measure poverty in a reliable way, in an independent way, in an autonomous way. And technically, that indicator should be a multidimensional poverty indicator. Why was that? Well, I think, or we believe that the main reason was that our Constitution and that specific law mentioned that a very important element for public policy were social rights, meaning that not only income was important, not only the relation with income and other elements were important, as we economists believe, it is true that also education, housing, healthcare, social security, access to food are important by themselves. These are part of social rights. And therefore, irrespective of the relationship between income and those elements, which we do have, we understand that there is a relationship, of course, there's a correlation between income and all these elements, having education by itself is important. So it is not only the case that education may increase income later, or, of course, that more income may enable you to have more education, but it is also true, according to the theory of rights, that having basic education is important by itself. It makes better citizens. And therefore, that poverty measurement that Congress was asking us to have has 7 elements, which I'm going to try to tell them later. So the other element which is very, very important, which I have to stress, is the way the Congress created Coneval and its governance structure. So Coneval, it's part of the executive. We have to keep that in mind. So what we do is we're part of government. However, we have a board. According to the law, have a board. We have 8 seats. The president of Coneval is the Minister of Social Development. Then there is a seat for the finance minister, and then we have 6 seats in which we have researchers from universities. And these 6 people, these 6 researchers, are elected by a body of people which comprises all the states, municipalities, Congress, and the executive. There are 44 votes, which means that these 6 people, which are the majority in the board, were not elected by the president, neither by the Minister of Social Development. And these 6 people are the ones, without any doubt, that has given Coneval the independence and autonomy. Sometimes some people from abroad ask me, how is it possible that you said 2 months ago that poverty increased in Mexico, being part of government? How can you do that and still be in your position? Well, and we believe that the answer is these 6 independent researchers are the shields against almost any attempt of trying to change numbers and trying to change figures as we used to do in Mexico in the past. So it has been really interesting that whenever whichever person comes to me and says, well, Gonzalo, why don't we do this? Why don't we try to do this with poverty? And he comes from the presidency. And I said, well, that might be a very good idea. why don't we ask our council members to see what they think? I said, well, better not. No, well. So we better not do that, all right? Because we're trying to construct here a democracy. And democracy includes reliability of governments. And therefore, let's not try to go back many decades. In fact, one of the most important elements, technically we do, which is the measurement of poverty, as I will explain later, there is this statistical office, el INEGI, and that runs a household survey, which is our input to measure poverty. And then we produce our do file in Stata, in SPZ, and R. We have three ways of producing that formula. And those two elements, both the survey done by the statistical office and our do file, both are public. Therefore, any person in Mexico or even in the world can take those elements, should compute poverty, and they should have exactly the same figures we published previously. And we do that very precisely because we don't want the Mexican citizens with this history of mistrust say, well, we don't believe that figure. Perhaps you are tricked. You are putting, no. Well, you run it yourself. If you run it yourself, you should have exactly the same indicator of poverty in Mexico, in Oaxaca, in Chiapas, in Nuevo León, in the state of Mexico. You should have exactly the same number. And we do it precisely because we understand that when you measure something, not only the technical element matters, it matters more the political element, which is, of course, one of the most important lessons we have learned here over the past 10 years or more in Mexico, that when you construct a monitoring and evaluation system, including measurement of poverty or other elements, of course you need the technical part. It's very important that your poverty indicator has some certain elements of a technicality, your indicators in terms of the program of the MIG program. However, it is also very important that you go hand in hand in a political process. Otherwise, no one is going to believe your very nice technical indicator that you're producing there. And therefore, so Coneval was set up in 2006. We have 10 years there so far. And this is what I wanted to share with you. This is perhaps the most important diagram we have and which guides our job every day. This is our diagram of a monitoring and evaluation system for social policy. Remember, Coneval does not go beyond social policy. We don't go to other areas, energy, or we only go to social policy. However, defining social policy is not that easy because you may have, of course, economic elements which are part of social policy. We do have evaluation on that, and it's very difficult to say, well, this is not social policy. Huh? The minimum wage policy, is that only economic or social policy? Well, it's part of social policy, of course. So on that sector, social policy, on that policy, we have this diagram, which is the one we use for managers and ministers, telling what we're doing in terms of evaluation. And the main element, which is in the center, is results. Every time we go to a minister, we keep saying, we have to go beyond only spending the budget or delivering things and have to go towards results. Tell your citizens that you are doing a good job because you are reducing anemia, because you are reducing poverty, because you are increasing people's rights in terms of access to health, or access to social security, or access to food. So let's try to measure results. So the culture we've tried to change, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, with Mexican government and the Mexican governments, including the states and municipalities, is let's go beyond what we spend and let's go to results. And so this is our main element. With that in mind, we have elements on the planning part, on the monitoring and planning part, which is let's try to have, as I said before, results indicator for programs. For that milk program, for Oportunidades, for all the programs we have here in Mexico, almost 285 programs, social programs in Mexico, according to our latest measurements. So let's have indicators to all of them. And let's try to link, which is the difficult part, let's try to link those programs with the national development plans. That's a very tricky one, because every 6 years, by law, we need to have a national development plan. So which are the main goals of the new government of the next 6 years. However, in order to achieve the objectives of that national development plan, you have to use the budget programs, which some of them have been there for the past 15 years. So we're trying to get new results with old tools, and therefore linking those programs to the national plan sometimes is very tricky. However, it is important to have it, otherwise it's very difficult to plan in a good way. So that's the planning part and indicator part. On the right-hand side, you have the evaluation process, the evaluation tools. So every year, we have an annual evaluation plan. We got this idea from the Chileans ages ago. And they've been running evaluations for almost 25 years in a very good way. And they have the annual evaluation plan. So we have that annual evaluation plan. And as you can see, every year, so Coneval says, together with sectors, together with ministers, so well, next year, or over the past 2 years, we're going to evaluate these programs and these policies with various types of tools. Not only impact evaluation. We like impact evaluation. We are academics somehow. But we also believe that it is impossible to have impact evaluations to all programs. It is costly, it takes time, and sometimes it doesn't really matter, it doesn't make sense to have impact evaluation in every single program. So we do have certain impact evaluations, but we also have other types of evaluation. We call them quick evaluations, rapid evaluations, desk evaluations, design evaluations, and we do have also an interesting one, sometimes difficult to get the theory behind these evaluations, is policy evaluations. It's not only about one specific program, it is let's assess if Mexico has a good policy in terms of microcredit to poor people. No? It's not only let's evaluate the single programs that we have in Mexico. Is it true that we have a whole scope in terms of microcredits, in terms of social security, in terms of nutrition? Is it true that we have a policy and therefore all the programs there make sense? Sometimes they don't. Yeah? So as an example, we have for the microcredits and all this type of programs, we have almost 24 programs scattered along the federal government, in the Ministry of Social Development, in the Ministry of Agriculture, in the Ministry of Economy, in the Ministry of whatever. So do they make sense, all of them together? No, they don't. And it's a lot of money. And sometimes they compete between each other. Therefore, they don't make sense, all of them together. So we have indicators, we have evaluations, and then we have down there what we just said, recommendations follow-up. We do have a mechanism in which we are convincing programs and managers and sectors that they need to have an action plan in order to improve their programs according to the findings from the evaluation and the indicators. Otherwise, you can have evaluations, costly sometimes, and then nothing happens. You just finish your evaluation. Sometimes you may have an impact in terms of an academic journal, which is fine, but you are not aiming for that. You're aiming to do evaluation in order to change things. So you do evaluation in order to improve programs. Therefore, that recommendations follow-up is a way, is a mechanism in which we are with the program helping them, but it is their responsibility to have this action plan. It doesn't mean that they have to address all recommendations. We believe that as evaluators, we may be mistaking certain points of view. So perhaps we are recommending certain elements which is not easy or is not even feasible. So let's them take the control of their improvement according to the evaluation. And then we have a summary. We have an annual performance report, which is a summary of that program's year or 2 years. Now we're doing it every 2 years, not every year. What is the summary of your indicators, of your evaluations, and of your improvements in terms of the evaluation process? And we have that in an annual performance report, which is for every program. It's almost 6 pages. And now we are doing a summary of a summary for 1-page report. Because, and it's true, because we are talking about 200 whatever programs. We understand it is difficult for a single congressperson or a budget person to read 6 pages times 225. And therefore 1 page is perhaps easier. And finally, or I should have started with that, within that monitoring and evaluation system, we are now, over the past 3 years, we have included the multidimensional poverty estimations, because that link is quite obvious. And it's quite obvious because you can have programs, you can have 2 new programs this year and 3 new programs next year, because we are trying to address one specific element. However, despite of the national evaluation and national development plan, you may not have an overall goal. And in social policy, the overall goal, a possible overall goal, is reduce poverty in a multidimensional way. And now, one of the elements that I wonder if you're going to the Ministry of Social Development as well?
We're going tomorrow.
Who are going to
hopefully, Minister me.
Really?
Hopefully.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
That'll be great because he's my friend. but despite he may be telling us that Coneval has some problems with that indicator, but he's going also to tell you, or someone is going to tell you, what is actually happening over the past 3 years, which is this government and many state governments now are trying to address the budgets and the programs in order to reduce poverty the way Coneval is measuring it, which is amazing because this government is a new government and a new party. So we believe in the year 2012 that if this new party, the PRI, will win, they may say, well, this multidimensional poverty estimation, it's in the past. It belonged to another party. It was not true, but they may say that. This poverty estimation, this poverty indicator is not ours. So let's throw it away. Well, what happened was the opposite. Amazingly, what happened was the opposite. A new government with a new party say, well, we believe that Coneval is reliable. We believe that Coneval doesn't address any specific political party. Therefore, if what they are doing is in general right, let's try to reduce poverty according to this indicator. So what you'll see, hopefully, in this week is that, especially if you go tomorrow to the Ministry of Social Development, is all the elements they are trying to coordinate with other ministers, convincing them that because we have a multidimensional poverty estimation with education and housing and health, and all, this means that reducing poverty is not only the objective of one single minister. Perhaps that is the most important change we've seen in terms of public policy, in terms of social policy over the past 3 years. That in the past, still there are some people who believe that, but it's why poverty went up? Oh, because the Minister of Social Development didn't do a good job. It was not true. It is the economy, it is housing, it is education, the ones responsible to reduce poverty, and therefore the minister is convincing anyone, many people, including the Bank of Mexico. Every time inflation goes up, our income threshold goes up. So every time the tortillas go up 5%, the lemon is up 10%. Every time you can see an increase on those elements in the basket, which is one part of the threshold, the Ministry of Social Development really is suffering.
Yeah.
Because despite what he does in terms of housing, that increases poverty. And therefore he's convincing many people now, including the Bank of Mexico, that we have to keep inflation down due to poverty reasons. Therefore now our system includes poverty. It makes sense. Next one, please. La siguiente, por favor. La siguiente. When we were trying to construct our own log framework, because we need log frameworks in all programs, we have one ourselves, which is the log framework of Coneval. No? The log framework means, you know what a log framework is?
Yeah.
Is it? Do you know what a log framework is?
If you want to ask.
Does anyone know what a log framework is? A logical model? Marco lógico? Well, it's basically a tool, a very simple tool in which.
A matrix?
Like
Yeah. Yeah, well, so it's just a tool telling you, or helping you to understand what is the program outcome and output and program activities and all that stuff. But the most important part of that log framework is that once you understand very well what is your program about and what's your outcome, then you construct indicators in order to measure that. Well, I was saying about the milk program. In the milk program log framework, you have milk delivery, but only as an intermediate indicator. Your main indicator may be percentage of poor kids without anemia. So that's your log frame. So you have a logical theory of change of things. Well, so Coneval needs its own theory of change or its own log framework. It was very easy, perhaps, to say, well, you know, our main objective is just to produce evaluations and produce poverty measurements, and that's it. So how was your performance last year? Well, very well, because we produced 100 evaluations. Well, we believe that was not true. It was not very important. No? If you tell the taxpayer, you know, we have an institution, and what they do is evaluations. So, well, I don't give a damn. Huh? I don't know what even an evaluation is about. But if you tell them, we have an institution which they do evaluations, they measure poverty, and they are trying to change and improve public policy because of that. Now more citizens may believe that is true. Therefore, what we do every year is we track the changes done in public policy due to Coneval's evaluations or indicators. It is not true to track that because we are not doing an impact evaluation on that. But however, we're trying to say, well, we said that before, and then through our mechanism of recommendations, we can say these people change several things because of these indicators. So, and therefore, what we're trying to tell you here is that over the past years, as an example, we have improvements in programs activities, in services, in reorientation, and in merging programs due to our evaluation process. So it is more, as I said, it is easier to sell to citizens that we are changing things and improving things through our evaluation process. The next one, please. Another example, or several examples. Coneval published poverty and food deprivation increase over the past years, and then the government launched extreme poverty and hunger. The strategy was called La Cruzada Nacional contra el Hambre. I mean, irrespective of if this is a good program, that's the answer of the government due to what we publish. Then we have a very nice example that a state governor had a cement floor program, piso firme program, and he wanted to be president ages ago. And therefore, he said, well, I want to show someone that I did a good job. So I'm going to ask you guys to help me to evaluate externally a program. Hopefully it's a good program. And if it's a good program, you tell everyone that I did a good job. So we even hire an academic from Berkeley, Paul Gertler, and he did an impact evaluation of piso firme. Have you heard of it? So it was a very nice impact evaluation because, very briefly, I'm going to tell you the technicalities. As you know, when you do an impact evaluation, you need a counterfactual. Well, what happened is that you have an urban area, which is called La Laguna in Mexico, in the north of Mexico. And it's shared between two states, Coahuila and Durango. And this governor was the governor of Coahuila, and the program Piso Firme was only in this part of La Laguna. Therefore, you can, in that part, you can cross the streets without noticing it, and you're in a different state. So you can live here and have a girlfriend on the other side, or whatever, and it's exactly the same place. And therefore, we had a very nice impact evaluation, we had a very nice counterfactual, and he showed that this academic that there was a very nice impact of that program, not only in terms of the happiness of people, but also in terms of reduction of diseases for children. And therefore, the nice thing about that is we presented this evaluation to the elected president in 2006. He bought the idea, and he increased the budget of the cement program almost 400%. Not only that, because our poverty indicator includes piso firme, you can see a reduction in poverty due to piso firme because of the evaluation. So this is a very nice way of putting it, that an evaluation made an impact on poverty. So we have several examples in which evidence is being used in Mexico in order to change what we do. It is not true that they use everything. There are still many other elements that we have to improve for them to use it, of course, but we have now several examples in which that is the case. And eventually, what we wanted to have in the first place is to have a monitoring and evaluation system which is a reliable one, which tells you precisely the problems and, of course, the advantages of programs for two reasons. For accountability reasons, and the second one is to improve public policy. It is very difficult to say that this is a complete system and that we have achieved everything. this is always, constructing a monitoring system, an evaluation system, is always an ongoing process. Chile is a good example. Chile started ages ago and is improving still a lot in what they are doing. We are improving what we do. But eventually, now we can say, if you see the difference between today and 20 years ago, we believe that a big change has been that most citizens, not all of them, but most citizens, believe in the figures we produce to them. And I think it's a very good achievement in a country with decades of mistrust. This is the way we measure poverty, with several dimensions. What we thought is to separate the dimensions in two. The income one, which is by itself there, and also the deprivation, which is down there as social rights. So what we're measuring down there is a deprivation in social rights in terms of education, health services, social security, housing quality, the services in housing, and access to food. So we go from right to left, without people without deprivations or with 6 deprivations. So the first cut we made is, well, let's see which population has at least one deprivation. It doesn't matter which is the one, because in terms of social rights, all are important in the same way. So we didn't have to play that program. So on rights, all rights are equally important. Therefore, those on the yellow, if you map Mexicans over there, you have all these Mexicans there with 1 or more deprivations. And then we thought, well, can we say that those are poor people? So, well, it's going to be difficult because some people there may have high income. So let's cut income on the other side. And then for Mexico, according to this multidimensional poverty indicator, poor people are those with 1 or more deprivations and who have below an income level. We believe that in order for governments to target better poor people, it was much better to do that instead of having as poor people all of them. So we have poor there, which is actually the opposite of the square on the right-hand side top, because those who are there, la siguiente, are people without deprivations and without low income. Eventually, we will have all Mexicans over there. The opposite place is poverty. If you go another one, and extreme poverty is on the opposite side. People with 3 or more deprivations and with a lower income, which is exactly on the opposite part of the green element. So this is the way we measure poverty. So all of the people using the household survey, if they are on that spot or on that spot, you just count them out, and then you know which is the number of poor people or the percentage of all that. That's the way we measure poverty. Colombia and Chile, they also have a multidimensional poverty. They have a different setup, slightly different setup, but they have the same way of thinking about poverty going beyond income. That's it. Thank you very much.